everybody has an opinion about everything.
Right.
But you have to know who you are authentically when the camera's on and when it isn't. And even as a woman, I understand and I know how to move in that. But there's not much you can say to me to hurt my feelings. Been there and done that. Got the t-shirt to prove it.
Hello, my name is JL Orr, and this is Mere Motivations. I want to welcome you all to our set today. Mere Motivations, we are an organization that talks about trauma, triggers, and overcoming your trauma and triggers for triumph. We talk about success stories and how to pivot your life to become the best version of yourself. Today, our guest is Varion Walton. I am so excited. She is a 20-year career journalist. She also has been on personality for Way 48.
Yes.
And the Bessie Smith Cultural Center board member.
Absolutely.
She has a documentary on Get Out Alive. She's had Emmy nominations and Edward R. Murrow Awards. Did I say that right?
You said it right.
I did it right. So she's a principal consultant for Walton and Associates, and like I said, television news anchor, reporter, speaker, consumer advocate, mentor, media specialist.
My goodness.
It's a pleasure.
Absolutely, JL. And you know what? The invitation is truly my honor because it's been a minute since I've been back in the Tennessee Valley. And when you said WAFF, I had to think about that. That's been a number of years.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. She said 20. It's been more like 25 or even 30 years.
25. Well, here you go. 25 and 25. That's what we're going to say. 25
the
and 25.
Let's
That's
make
right,
it work.
baby.
How about that being motivation
Yes,
enough to get
yes.
us started, indeed.
Yeah, so I just want to ask this question because here I am with the honor of interviewing the premier interviewer. How does it feel to be interviewed today?
It's about time.
It's about time.
You use the word pivot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, after a 25, 30-year career in the 2-5, if you're not about your business and being intentional in terms of pushing your brand, you're going to find yourself left behind. Walton and Associates, as a premier consultant for that, is something I've done for the last 20 years. But you and your crew have reminded me and reconnected me to my core.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we as women, we constantly take care of everyone else. But it's been rewarding to actually be a part of this inaugural week of Mere Motivations. And I'm here to tell you, you've got something here. You can go in and take that to the bank.
And listen, and I trust it coming from you because you tell the truth.
I do. I try.
And you do your research.
I do.
And you know people.
People is relationships and people. That's a part of any and everything you do, whether it's spirit-filled, in your daily life, in your family life, when you are true and authentic to who
Yes.
you are. You know, there are people that are going to love you unconditionally, and then there are those that will just love you, you know?
Right, right.
But the biggest thing is to be around those who celebrate you as opposed to tolerate you. And that's truly the way that that's the only way we're going to make it through 2025 is together.
Yes, that's true. Together. Togetherness is what's most important because we live in a society that thrives on dividing, and we live on a society that thrives on pointing out differences. But what we need to do is focus on the similarities and what makes us one. You know, and I think that's important. And with that being said, I want to lead into the question. And in your 25 years of being a journalist, what have you learned the most about people?
That we're more common than we realize. That's even down to the crew that's a part of Mere Motivations. Might start with a number of people here in Huntsville started almost 18, 20 years ago. And when you think about the 6 degrees of separation, they're more like 4, you know, 2 removed. Because somebody knows somebody, someone else knows somebody, but it is your reputation, who you've been, you know, when no one is watching, and who you've been throughout that entire time, that's going to stand the test of time. You know, I'm not telling you I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that says she doesn't work her tail off. And outside of that, the rest of it, your opinion of me is not my business. However, it's important to me for you to say, as a journalist, that she really digs deep, and then she digs even deeper when it comes to seeking the truth about things that really affect you, your family, and the generations to come.
Right, and you're reporting news, so news it can be scary, right? Because people look to you, right? People look to reporters and journalists to tell us what's going on out in the world. And we look for that sense of security in what you have to say.
Well, you have to be one of the most trusted names in news. There are so many people that have confused bloggers with journalists. And unfortunately for us as journalists, that line is getting blurred. You know, that line used to be very defined between tabloid and news. And if you are someone that can be true, if ethics is a part of what you do, if integrity is a part of what you do, no matter what format, good news and good storytelling honestly transcends technology, cameras. There are people that are making a difference on TikTok. I'm not a TikTok girl.
Right.
I don't have that kind of time, but you
Right.
have to meet people where they are. And it's interesting, even Jamal Bryant, you know, who started with the Empowerment Temple out of Baltimore. It was interesting to watch him over the years meet people who they were. There were times that he would have some 20,000, 30,000 people watching his sermons on Sunday morning
Yes.
in real time in Twitter. So journalists have to make certain that they can pivot, that they can move with the times, and that they understand what it is that people truly want. Nobody is sitting down watching the news at 5, 6, and 10 anymore. Our grandmothers did that.
Yeah.
Society-
They made sure they watched the news.
Society today isn't doing that because they really don't have the time. But you have to be someone that knows your craft, works on your craft each and every day, and just know exactly what sets you apart from everything that's out there, because blogs come and go. There's a saturation,
Yes.
oversaturation of blogs that are out there. But if you are someone that built your foundation on truly being about your business and understanding what it is that you do, funny story comes to mind. Even being here in Huntsville, when I started Restaurant Scorecard, it was a franchise that honestly changed my life at Channel 48. And I can't tell you how many restaurants, I won't name them, corporate chains, that would try to push a stack of gift cards in my hand, you know, to get a favorable report.
Right.
And they would cook for us, they would do this, that, and the other, and the photographers really didn't like shooting Restaurant Scorecard for me because I wouldn't let them eat a thing. You can't
really?
you can't eat the macaroni and cheese. You can't eat the lunch that they prepare for you, because the day and hour your score goes from 98 to 68, guess who's going to be on your front door?
Oh, yes.
Okay? So when you
Yes.
are above board, when you truly understand authentically your job, you'll find that longevity is a huge part of that.
Now tell me, when we talk about bloggers and real journalism, the difference, and I believe, and let me know if I'm wrong, is the research and in-depth studies of it being more just opinion. Do you think, I think a lot of times people on social media, and they project their opinions of what they feel the facts are. And journalism, tell me the in-depth, so we can know the in-depth of the research that you have to go through to bring a truthful story.
Well, the biggest thing that I think that changed the industry was when Facebook gave everyone access to a live button.
Oh,
Okay, that's when it changed. Just because you have a live button on your Facebook account doesn't necessarily mean that you should turn it on. And anybody that knows, anytime I go live, I'm coming with information
Right.
that's not only for your heart and soul, but information that can make a difference for you and your family. And this business has changed over the years, but the fundamentals is what we have to get back to in order to survive what may be coming down the pipe.
And as you say that, I lead into a question, and in it, I want you to answer it honestly, because there's been some opinions perpetuated about news that the assumption has been that the assumption that some news has been fake news, and that you actually have a story where someone who didn't know you tried to attack you because of your art and journalism, and they assumed that your news was how has that touched your heart and soul as someone who's a truth teller and a truth seeker, that someone would assume, based on the way that society is, that everybody has the live buttons and everybody have opinions and everybody's blogging? Tell me, how has that affected or impacted you in your career and as a person, and how did you bounce back from that attack?
Well, you have to understand something. Accountability is a huge part of what we do as journalists. I don't think the term fake news would have ever stuck if corporate leaders had been doing their part early on. That goes back to trust. There are some people in many markets that, I'll put it this way, when the Oklahoma bombings happened, I'll never forget it. In Huntsville, you could actually watch the Birmingham stations as well.
Okay.
And I think the gentleman's name was Bill Couch. Bill had done the morning show in Birmingham for years. And though we woke up to images that looked like a third world country, and it almost felt like the Armageddon.
Yes.
When Bill got on that set at Fox 6, I, as a journalist, started to exhale, because Bill was about as comfortable for me as wearing an old pair of shoes.
Okay.
It's not who's bringing you the news. It's not so much of what's happening in the news, but who's bringing it to you.
Right, okay.
Trust has to be a part of what it is that we do. Fake news stuck because the industry got away from what it was we should have been doing from the giddy up. And that's the business of the people. You mentioned an Edward R. Murrow. I received an Edward R. Murrow out of a story I did in the city of Madison. And anytime I come back to North Alabama, I'm just very proud of the work that I did with that. We had a 9-camera setup where we deliberately set up a home, burned it down deliberately, intentionally, and showed you the dangers and how to get out alive. As a result of that 9, we've got 3 cameras on us right now, so imagine even more.
Right.
So every angle was covered, but as a result of that, and showing you that you can literally put sprinklers in your home for the same amount of money that you would use to carpet your home.
Amazing.
Changed the city of Madison, and the Madison city leaders literally adopted that. If I remember it may have been like in 2001, and they enacted that in an ordinance to where a lot of contractors put sprinklers in homes.
That's a fantastic idea.
It is. I mean,
right?
Smoke damage and water damage is different from coming home to nothing.
To nothing.
So the
ashes.
city leaders at that time saw the use in that. They saw the intention behind that and the purpose of that. And we actually changed lives, and we changed laws and local ordinances with that. Restaurant scorecard. I didn't have a concept, a clue of how we wanted to do the concept, but my boss at the time, he said, Varion, you've got to go to rookie inspection school. If you are going to go in these restaurants and talk about them, you have to truly know what it is that you're talking about. So I went to rookie inspection school twice. I went to rookie inspection school when I was in Huntsville, and I went to rookie inspection school when I was in Mobile. So the viewers actually got to see me sit side by side, shoulder to shoulder with real inspectors. And what was crazy about Huntsville, because it was the inaugural part of that, people thought that I told them where not to eat. No, I didn't tell them where to eat and where not to eat. I showed them how to determine who really deserves their repeat business. Because here's a fact that's never changed. since the year of 2005. 3,000 people die every day from something they ordered off the menu.
Wow.
And their only crime was ordering lunch. Food poisoning is real.
And especially with the food, because I'm a foodie. I love to cook. I love to go to restaurants. I love to taste food. And the ingredients nowadays, it used to be, back in our great grandmother days, those red peppers, they came out the garden. Those cabbage, they came out. You knew the food was real food. You knew the meat was real meat. You knew the seasonings were real. And now it's so many food colorings and preservatives and assumptions of what is
Hormones. Can you say hormones?
hormones.
Farm to table is something that we've got to get back to. Obesity is a huge part, and it's an epidemic in this country. But it goes back to what it is that we're feeding our children, what it is that we're feeding our families. Our children are affected by that, even with their school-age children, are not doing as well in school because of what we're feeding them.
And the mass, because the hormones come into play, from what I understand, is that because it's the mass production that we're not just growing chickens. We're almost like growing chickens. Now it used to be like you have chickens and you sell them to the grocery stores and everything, but now it's mass productions. So put them in the hormones in the chickens, put the hormones in the cows, put the hormones in the pigs, make them bigger so you can get more money off
Have
of
them
a
mature
chicken,
faster.
off of a right. And that stuff is still in the pores of the food, and by the time it gets from the farm and then in the truck and then in the grocery store and everything, it's been injected with so much, and when you put it on the table, it's
You've got to inform people. You have to give them the information they need. And that's the thing that my industry has to get back to. But then another downside to that, if everyone and anybody shouldn't have access to a live button on Facebook, you also have to know your craft. You have to
Yes.
think about where this industry is going. They're hiring younger, prettier, but do they really know their craft? And the believability factor is the thing. Again, I say to you, there's a difference between bloggers and journalists.
Yeah.
You either know your craft or you don't.
because you have a reputation for integrity. You know that when you see Varion Walton, she's someone who's not just bringing you news, she's bringing you the investigation of something that she studied. She was there. She saw it. She studied it. She's bringing you truth. You were just in New Orleans.
I was.
Tell us about that.
I was there for my best friend's birthday, and unbeknownst to me, and that's the thing, if it happened in New Orleans, it could happen anywhere. Bourbon Street is taking a hit by that, by not having barriers, but it lets us know that we are all vulnerable again to domestic terrorism. I just told you about the bombing in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Waking up to images that are third world, it looked like it was a third world country, but we're having more and more of that. But you as a person and protecting your family, you have to be aware of your surroundings.
You do.
And that's the world that we live in today. It's unfortunate that it happened, but what I will take a second to talk about, and this is something I know for sure, the people of New Orleans have the resilience to overcome this.
Yes.
They've overcome things with Katrina. They've overcome things with Harvey. It's been one disaster after another, and I'm going to tell you the truth. Many of my friends in New Orleans, they're kind of tired of the resilience. They're ready for a break.
Yes.
But New Orleans is going to shine in the midst of its sorrow. And it's not to be disrespectful, but if you've ever met anybody like a Gina Brown or a Big Frida or anybody that is a native of New Orleans, even when they were displaced in Houston and Atlanta during Katrina, people were like, you want to go back home to what? There's nothing there. And they were like, you don't understand. New Orleans is my home. And New Orleans is a part of my culture. New Orleans is a part of my DNA. And when you think about a city like New Orleans, Louisiana, there's no other city in the world like New Orleans.
Oh, no, it's very unique. Very unique.
It has its own people, its own culture, its own language.
So food, flavor,
Absolutely.
flair.
So who wouldn't want to migrate back to that?
Right.
But New Orleans will rise again. But we just have to be conscientious of keeping each other safe. It's a slogan for some, but it's a way of life. If you see something, say something. And you have a moral obligation. Firefighters can't be everywhere all the time. Policemen can't be everywhere all the time. That's why I taught you how to police yourself when it came to restaurant scorecard.
Yes.
I literally helped you to understand and determine not only who deserves your repeat business when you go in a restaurant, but you had to learn how to read that health score. Do you realize that you can have a score of 90 and there is something on the right side of that inspection sheet that could really make you sick or gross you out, including roaches?
Lord, no.
So
Because
it
when
was-
you see 90, you be thinking,
No, ma'am.
okay, I'm pulling up.
No, ma'am.
That's good.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
We
No,
got to
ma'am,
read that
Tam.
other side of the card.
Absolutely.
I mean.
And I will say this, the Tennessee Valley was the very first region that worked with the station, Channel 48 and me, and actually putting health inspections in the drive-up. The state of Alabama
yeah.
doesn't require it. You deserve to know, even on the go, what the health rating is.
Yes.
And if there is a history of foodborne illness from wherever it is that you're eating. So we give you the information that you need just to truly protect yourself.
And that's important. I want you to tell me a little bit about Walton and Associates.
Walton and Associates was an aha moment for me. Ironically, when I left the Tennessee Valley in 2005, you always have to know the why. You always have to know the why, Jerry. I knew that I could have done New York. I could have done Atlanta. Actually, I was shopping a deal in New Orleans at the time, and Katrina had just happened. And again, there were television stations that were displaced. I had a news director said, you deserve everything you're asking for in terms of salary, but good luck in a place to live. My why at the time was I needed to get home. My grandfather was in hospice care at the time. And amazingly, he only lived 6 months after I got on the air in Mobile. But that is something that was so rewarding for me personally that you don't get a redo on that. And the biggest thing about Walton and Associates, I looked at it. I had a lot of information after 20 years in the business that each one teach one. You have to reach,
Yes.
teach, and empower that next generation. And honestly, that's how we started. Ironically, Walton and Associates is a consulting firm that helped younger talent to land their first job, second job, or third job. And I'll never forget it. There was a snowstorm in Huntsville. I think it was 2011. And I started that company on nothing more than trust, belief in myself, and the will of God. And I literally put a graphic up that Martin Luther King Jr. said, take the first step even when you can't see the whole staircase.
Oh, yeah.
So the irony of this and Mere Motivations, you're doing what you're doing today is no different than what I did in 2011. You don't have the whole staircase in front of you, but you have a crew that supports you.
I do.
You have a crew that believes in you. You believe in yourself, and you see a need for information. So information is key. Knowledge is power. And I want to say to you, keep going.
I appreciate it because just like you, I believe in bringing people substance and in sharing stories to help people overcome, different things in their lives so they can go from, where what may have been something that was, because everybody has a story that a part of their life that wasn't the best part of their life. And we need to teach, you said each one, teach people how to pivot and to be more successful in their lives from a bounce back. And so with that being said, I would like to ask you, what are some of the best and worst, or what is one of the best or one of the worst moments in journalism in all of your years? What is like the best moment you've ever had? And then what is a moment would you say, it was hard for me to get through
Well,
this?
the Get Out Alive deal, to be back in the Tennessee Valley, back in the city of Madison, to know that you've got to live an impactful life. When you wake up, and you and I shared this the other day, if you wake up with a pulse, you still have a purpose.
Right.
So if we woke up today, there is something that still needs to be done. The worst of the worst for me, honestly and truly, was a story that I'll still haunts me today. There was a baby, and I'll never forget her name, Kateria Blackburn. I was in Birmingham. Her mother was a crack addict,
Oh, wow.
and her mom traded her for crack. And the thing that I want to just take 2 seconds, and I hope that everyone gets the message in this, that baby was missing for the first day. Then she was missing for the 10th day. Then she was missing for the 20th day. And I was so exhausted because they had signed that story to me. By the 21st day, I literally held up a picture that wasn't even a 3x4. And I said, folks, this is the only photo of Kateria Blackburn that I can show you. What is sad is to know this baby was conceived in crack. She died of crack, and crack is still affecting her life because only her father, not her mom, not her extended family, had a photo to even help the police know what she looked like. And that broke my heart when I had shots of my nieces and nephews from the moment they were 3 minutes
Right.
out of the womb. And you have to understand it takes a village. That's not just a cliche. You have to know that every new life has the right to have an awesome start. My life was tremendous. It was absolutely tremendous. I had a mom and dad that made a difference for me and my siblings. So I would want things to be stupendous for that next generation, Walton. We have a hashtag in my family where we talk about Walton Strong. You know, my nieces and nephews were raised and educated in Europe. And that European education really made a big difference for them. You know, they're graduating as lawyers. I've got an actress, an inspiring actress, you know, that's getting ready to go to school in the New England part of the country, coming back to the States. You have to wake up every day and just start with what's right there at your front door.
Right.
You know? And just know that you can make a difference if you try. And just keep the inspiration that's within you, share it with someone else.
So with a lot of the negative stories, what was a story that you were like, yes, because I had a great outcome, like a story that had the best positive outcome that you can remember in all your years of journalism?
I don't know if it was the best, but it's the one that comes to mind. I was working with NBC News, and I do a lot of freelance with NBC. I had the privilege of watching John Lewis on the Edmund Pettus Bridge for the last year of his life. And it was interesting that I was a freelance producer. There wasn't a correspondent there. And we had just gotten a drop. And she looked at me. She was like, I can't believe you're going there. You know, sister to sister. Vice President Kamala Harris at the time was on that Edmund Pettus Bridge. And I had John Singleton in the center. I had Nancy Pelosi to the left of him.
Okay.
And I had Kamala Harris to the right. And I looked at her and I said, you know, my sources tell me that you just wrapped up a call with Joe Biden, and it would appear that you're ready to accept the nod as vice president. And she looked at Pelosi. She looked at John Lewis. She said, well, I cannot tell a lie. I have spoken to Joe Biden, and we're ready to move forward. And I felt very proud of that moment, because not only did those skills of 20 and 30 years ago lead to that moment, but that was an exclusive for NBC News.
Yes.
And to know that John Lewis literally walked his last 50 steps on that bridge for the last time. And I was a part of that history. And that stayed with me for a long time.
Yes.
I'll never forget the day and the hour. That was in early March of 2020. And honestly, we should have been quarantining then. By March 19th, the world had shut down.
And isn't it something?
And nothing else mattered after that. That's when we went through COVID quarantine. But I still remember that moment. And for a long time, I had that video clip of her confirming that she was going to accept the nod as vice president, changing the course of history in America, our history, forever.
Our history forever. Yes, I've got, this brings me to my another question. It says, with nearly 2 decades of experience in the newsroom, how have you seen the role of women and minorities evolving media in the industry?
It hasn't changed enough, and I'm going to be frank about that. Where
Okay.
I'm not comfortable discussing politics, my politics. I've never discussed my politics. My politics doesn't matter as a journalist. But what I am going to be very adamant about is not much has changed. When I started in this business 20 something years ago, the number of minority managers was only 2%. Today in 25, it's roughly 3%. You have to walk in a newsroom or walk in a building. I don't care if you're a financial advisor, if you're a nurse. Do you know that the thing that a friend said to me that I never thought about? Healthcare never included us. She said, Varion, I'm going to give you a challenge. She said, I want you to go through a doctor's manual, and I want you to find a sketch, a drawing, something that shows a black patient, or just better yet, a black fetus. And I looked and I went and I looked and I didn't find it because it didn't exist. So you have to do whatever it is you do every day, embracing diversity,
Yes.
seeing things through a different lens. Everyone has something that they can contribute. My experience is not going to be your experience.
Right.
You know, I didn't grow up in the ghetto. I didn't. You know, but that doesn't mean that I can't identify with hard times. You know? So that is the biggest thing, is embracing diversity. And you said it earlier. We have more in common than most of us realize. But if you are willing to at least have a dialogue, start a dialogue to understanding better, you'll find that a lot of things that we go through as conflicts would really not even exist.
What advice would you give someone who is seeking a career as a journalist?
Know your craft.
How would they go about, like, what steps in knowing their craft?
Writing.
Because
Writing. You got to write. You got to write, and rewrite. If you don't know your craft, and a good this business is full of mediocre writers, from the network to the small stations that are local. But if you are a good writer, you can transcend having a camera. You can transcend TikTok. You can transcend a studio. Simply give the people the information that they need to help them make informed decisions. I have shot entire reports on my iPhone with just me.
Yeah.
I was in
Just
Paris.
you.
I was in Paris when the fire at Notre Dame started. And though I was still with NBC, I got the party started until they could get a crew from London. That's another proud moment for me,
Yeah.
truly.
Taking the initiative to just be ready.
And you got to always be ready. If you're a journalist and you don't have something that you can record, we're historians. And that's the thing, if I could wrap that part up.
Yeah.
Journalists are historians. That's who we are by nature. You are there to document something, whether you're documenting it in real time, but you have to bear witness to history that is being made. So if you learn to be a solid writer, and because of the sentiment, if you will, of journalists today, I would advise any young person to get a major in English. Learn to write, learn composition. You could take an English degree and go be a public relations person for Delta Airlines. You can go and do public relations for Airbus. You can go and do public
With an
relations
English degree.
With an English degree. I'm not
Yes.
gonna mince words with that. I today would never advise a young person to get a degree in journalism. You're gonna learn the nuts and bolts, and every television station is going to teach you how to go and cover and gather news. But if you get a degree in English, the sky is the limit.
That's really good to know, because you're such an eloquent speaker.
I just never had a southern drawl. And funny story about that. I, as a kid growing up in Pritchard, Alabama, was ridiculed. My brother, God bless him, I love my brother with my whole heart. I'm older, but he was the one that felt like he was my protector and my big brother. A lot of kids would say, your sister always sounds like she talking white. And he was like, what's talking white?
Right.
You know, she's speaking English. Why is that so difficult for you to understand?
Why do we have to label an eloquent speaker as
Absolutely.
someone?
But he took a lot of beat downs, for defending
Protecting
me
his sister.
and protecting his sister. But the bottom line is, Southern draws work for whomever, they work for. I just never, there's some people that have a Southern accent, they have a Southern drawl, and then there's some that have what I call a Southern glide. They're almost singing, sing-talking
Right.
kind of delivery with what they do, but just never did, and was absolutely asked, are you sure you were born in the same family, the right family, because you don't sound like anybody else in your family. I'm definitely a part of the Walton clan, and again, Walton strong is how we live our lives. Absolutely.
I believe it. I mean, my grandma used to say all the time from us, she'd say, Jerry Lynn, we come from good stock.
Oh, yeah.
I used to love when she said that. Now, as a woman, in my prime, at the age that I am, I understand what she meant was strong, an overcomer. And as a woman in the industry, where you're in front of cameras and you're in the media and you have lots of people around you, as a woman, how have you had to adjust in the industry that is mostly like similarly male dominated? How have you had to adjust yourself as a woman to match that energy, to rise above what most people think women are?
You have to know who you are through and through. You have to know who you are through. There are so many cyber bullies that sit behind keyboards. They have that vibrato when they're in their own living room and can say something mean and nasty. Everybody has an opinion about everything.
Right.
But you have to know who you are authentically when the camera's on and when it isn't. And even as a woman, I understand and I know how to move in that. But there's not much you can say to me to hurt my feelings. Been there and done that. Got the t-shirt to prove it. But I know authentically, without a doubt, every day that I wake up, Varion Walton is who I am. My name is different, or used to be. There's so many Varions that are out there now. Initially, it was of German descent, but the name is more common now than ever before. But it was instilled in me, even with my dad, and he had a very interesting way of saying it. He grew up in Marengo County, Alabama, one of the poorest counties in South Alabama, and there were 13 of them, and he was number 8. So by the time he got the hand-me-downs, there wasn't a whole lot to hand down.
Right.
So he made it clear
number
to
8.
us, me, my brother, and my sister, all I have is my name. Don't piss on it.
Listen,
I don't mean to be
said
crass.
all I want is my name.
Absolutely.
Give me my name. And
Yeah.
she did something with that name.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Definitely.
And throughout history, you've seen the world evolve, I'm sure, in 25 years. Like you were standing on the bridge when, with Kamala Harris. That's amazing. Even as a woman, as a vice president, like, I'm so proud of her and her accomplishments, because just like you, she had to overcome so many hurdles in a male-dominated society to be seen and heard, as they say, the qualified black woman.
Okay.
I have to say, I'm not so much on government, but that's my girl, because I'm proud of her. And as a woman who've risen above what most people think of women, to be successful as a profession and to put her name out there is something that is certifiably good. That's really important. And what impact has it made on you as a person? How do you see the world differently from where you viewed it as a journalist, being right there on the scene?
Well, you have to really understand who people are, and you want to stay optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic every day that I wake up, but tomorrow's not promised. The time you think you have, you don't. I have had a lot of colleagues, confidants, and dear friends to leave this earth in 24. But moving forward, the lesson that I've learned for me, even as a journalist, as a daughter, you can't pour from an empty cup.
True.
You have to learn how to take care of you before you can take care of anyone else. Even in a burning plane, the flight attendant will tell you to put the apparatus on yourself first and then help the person sitting next to you. So we as women have got to learn how to get back to caring for our noodle. So many people, the most prevalent story I've heard recently, there's an epidemic of loneliness in America. We're all connected. We've got 15,000 contacts in our phone, but how many of those people are actually confidants?
Yes, that's so very true.
You're going to catch that next week.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You can have a bunch of people who are associates, but how many of them are truly confidants? Life is about making the connection. The connections that I made in North Alabama some 20 years ago are working for me today. They're working in this moment. That's exactly how I met you.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, but it is the relationships that you cultivate that will ultimately bring you a harvest that you can live with and live on for years to come.
You said something earlier, which I'm going to connect with that. You used the word trust and you used the word integrity. And it's important to surround yourself in a village of people that have the integrity and that you can trust have your best interests at hand.
And don't forget the word ethics.
Ethics.
Ethics is something that has left my industry many years ago, and that's why it's in a free fall. I said it. Yes, I did. TV news is in a free fall. And what you have to find as a person, as a viewer, what it is that you need in terms of information that's going to shore up your family, help your family to survive what's coming down the pike, and to honestly deal with the unknown.
And even when you say what's coming down the pike, I think the thing is that the preparedness for that is the integrity, is the trust, is having the circle of people that have your best interests. So, you know, each one teach one, that we're here for each other to hold in arms and to be that support system. So no matter what it is, we can take the brunt of that, because really how we survive life is being our authentic selves. And no matter what, not allowing anything to change the core of who you are. Because as they say, you know, as the smoke clears, when the smoke clears, I'm still me. And you're still you, no matter what has been. Varion Walton is still you. And there's so many more years to come in journalism. There's so many more things for you to report and you to bring to us. And we can trust that name, that when you bring us the news, we know it's real.
Well, the biggest thing, and that's the biggest lesson, honestly and truly, the time you think you have, you don't. And if you're not living a life that impacts others, at the end of the day, if you're a young journalist watching this, find the love of your life often. Make certain the love of your life is your friend.
Yes.
Make certain that person is truly supporting you, celebrating you, not just tolerating you.
Or using you.
Absolutely.
Celebrating you.
And
right.
the biggest lesson I ever learned, you are the only person you can do anything about. You
That's
can't
true.
change another individual.
You be the best person you can be. And when each person is their best self, then we can be better together, right? Because I can't change you and you can't change me. But if you work on you and I work on me together, we a hit team.
And we're stronger together.
We're stronger together.
And that's evident right here with Mere Motivations.
Oh, well, thank you. I
Absolutely.
appreciate that. I want to ask you if you could describe yourself, and I know you have a big vocabulary, so if you can describe
Sometimes.
yourself in one word, what would it be and why?
Resilient.
Resilient.
Resilient. I have been knocked down. I have had some disappointments. But at the end of the day, I have always believed in Jeremiah 29, not to get, I'm a spiritual person.
Come
I'm
on
not a
now. That's all
religious
right. You
person.
can bring it. You can bring it.
But even when I was nothing more than a glimmer in my daddy's eyes, God already knew the plans he had for me. I had to just walk in it.
Come on, of good and not of evil.
And trust him and
Yes.
believe that he had me at every turn. There have been some things that literally, I had something happen that was so horrible, and I won't go into that. I was rendered mute. It was a blessing to some, but I didn't talk for 2 weeks because I was in shock by what had happened in my family. But it helped me to grow. It helped me to understand what matters, and it helped me to honor my mom and dad. I'm so fortunate for Carolyn Walton and Jim Walton. My dad calls my mom Tootsie.
I love that.
That's been his nickname for her. And occasionally, I call her Thelma. We're Thelma and Louise.
Okay.
On many occasions, but they are indeed. I don't have a child. I can't say that either, Jerry. I have 33 children I never gave birth to through Walton and Associates.
Come on now, because
Okay.
a spiritual mom is a mom too.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But my two children today are Jim and Carolyn Walton because I want to care for those who once took care of me.
That's honor. That's honor. That is honor right there. I love that. So when we're talking about that, I want to say about, tell me about the journey of some of your stories from childhood, because I always say everybody has a color purple story, where we have some difficulties in our childhood or different things that have happened to us and the pivot and how we've evolved as humans. And so, like, what are some of the best, and or if you like to speak of worst moments in your childhood that made you Varion Walton?
Well, you know what? I had an awesome childhood.
That's great.
I did. I'm not going to lie about that. I'm a product of teen parents. I'm the reason they came together. I'm not the reason they stayed together. My father was always present in my life. He was always my role model, my idol. I never had to look beyond my front door to understand
That's amazing.
who I was connected to. And my dad made a difference simply with his presence. I grew up with girls who didn't know their dads. And I was a debutante. I was presented to society at 19 years old. And I didn't understand why half of my debs, went crazy with their fathers visiting and taking them shopping and getting them ready for the cotillion. And I was like, you can do that anytime your dad's around. And
Yeah.
at 19, because my father was in my life and so prevalent in my life my whole life, I didn't understand that's not the experience for everybody.
Yes.
So actually being around other women, other girls who had different experiences, helped me to honor, protect, and acknowledge my parents to the utmost. Because my childhood was damn near perfect. I'm just gonna
That's
call a thing
amazing.
a
Yeah,
thing.
and that's a great testament too, because it goes to show that there are some really great parents out here.
Absolutely.
Right, there are some really great parents out here, and that supported you. How did they support you in your journey to be a journalist, knowing that, oh my God, my baby's gonna be everywhere, and it's not gonna be safe, and there's gonna be crime? Like, how did they support you in that?
Funny story, and this just instantly popped in my head. I was a violinist in high school.
I love
Got to first chair, but you have to understand the migration of that. When I started out, I was horrible. My dad actually built a dollhouse. He said, baby, I want you to embrace the violin, but I need you to understand you're not there quite yet.
Okay.
So I want you to
Sound
practice. I want you to go practice in the dollhouse until you get to that point.
love it.
And I did. He didn't hurt my feelings about it.
But he built you a dollhouse.
That was his way of supporting me with that. And I'll never forget being a senior in college, and we had to do dance interpretation. And I was a journalism major. And my mom saw me dancing outside on their patio. And she said, baby, I'm going to just tell you the truth. I want you to stick to the journalism thing because the dancing is just not going to be your thing.
Okay.
So it was something that I accepted from them.
Truth and love.
Truth and love. And they were truthful about it. And it didn't hurt my feelings. It just helped me to understand where my focus and my strength should be.
You were talking about being mute for a moment in your childhood, and I rendered mute for a moment. It reminds me of Maya Angelou. She was that way for a while. She had something horrific happen in her childhood, and she was mute for a while. She was shocked, and it was silence. And in that silence, something beautiful came out of it, which was her teacher who taught her poetry, and they gave her books and to read. And from that, when she started to speak again as a poet, because somebody, ushered that out of her silence. What was ushered out of your silence in that moment?
Understanding that family is everything, to always be aware of your surroundings, and just know that you got to stay prayed up. Much like New Orleans is dealing with the Bourbon Street tragedy, there were people who thought they were ringing in the new year and celebrating. It wasn't that they were doing anything wrong. You just never know. So out of being silent came a stronger individual who understands being grounded. And family grounds me.
And how old were you then when that happened?
I was 17.
Okay, so you were mature, and then that was a good moment because here you are about to now go into the world. So you had that moment of grounding before you went into the world.
Absolutely, because life isn't all about rainbows and butterflies. There are some people, the most that you can do with your children is to teach them what it is that you value, but also help them to understand that the world is going to be the best teacher for them in terms of judging them, having certain ideas about them, and not really ever even knowing. I'll wrap it up this way. My sister, who's 8 years younger than me, Dr. Katina Walton, she became a PhD because my brother and I set the bar high for her. And she was a teacher in Mobile. And when I was on the air in Mobile, she said, why is it that all my life, I've watched you allow people to call you Valerie Walton? And she said, when you hit the air in Mobile and they supered or put your name on a font and had Varion Walton, there were people that were like, change your name and everything.
Right. Like, no, you just got it wrong.
You got it wrong from the giddy up. And she said, from that moment on, I understood who was truly a friend of yours and who knew you.
Wow. That's
because
important.
those who didn't know you called you Valerie.
Right.
And that was the barometer for me to understand who truly knew the essence of you as a kid growing up in this community.
And you just said something about teaching your kids that life isn't all about butterflies and rainbows. And when you said that, I thought to myself, the truth is we have to understand that butterflies come from caterpillars. And
That's a whole nother story.
Butterflies come from caterpillars, and they crawl on the ground. I was thinking about, because I wrote in my book, the book that I have, The Great Get Out, I was writing in my book that the butterfly comes from the caterpillar, and if you survive on the ground, in the terrain where birds can come down and get you this way, or you can have some come out the ground like moles or whatever and gobble you that way. If you survive and break out of that chrysalis, and the struggle with the butterfly is that you have to fight to get out of the chrysalis, which is what we call the cocoon. You have to fight, and you can't help the butterfly out the cocoon, or their wings won't be strong enough to fly. So the beauty comes from the type of hardship that you go through, and the pressure.
And the pressure.
Right, because you got to put pressure on it. And then even rainbows come after some of the most horrific storms. The rainbow is after it rains. You don't usually see a rainbow pop on a clear, perfect day. When we show rainbows, when we paint them in portraits, we show rainbows that, you got the sun, you got the grass, and you got this, and then you show a rainbow. But the truth is, the most beautiful things come from some of the worst hardships.
And the best thing about that rainbow is, thank God, that the rain ultimately stops. It doesn't rain always. And that's the thing we have to keep in mind moving forward. It doesn't rain always.
Yeah. The storms don't always last. So how do you balance, because you are a big family person, balance your career and family as you travel all over the world and still have your parents to care for?
I find that me time. Me time is essential. We as women multitask. We multitask all the time, but you have to replenish your cup. Again, you can't pour from an empty cup, and I learned that the hard way. Hitting that brick wall, Jerry.
Yes.
Is
running.
Is an ugly thing.
Yes.
And when you hit it, it's not pretty, but you can recover. But it can be prevented to where if you pace yourself, use time management. Those are the key words moving through the new year, family.
Right.
Time management. Be intentional
Yes.
about what it is that you're doing and learn to restore yourself and then care for those that you really care about.
Well, I appreciate you allowing me. It's been an honor to interview you today, and I want to reward you with a Mere Motivations tote bag. This tote bag says "Meant to Be." This is a meant to be authentic tote bag, and I would like you to carry some of your memories and your memoirs in this bag. I know everywhere you go that it is definitely meant to be.
Well, this was meant to be, and what I need you to understand, any journalist watching this understands, especially if she's female, because I want you guys to know this is perfect for a microphone. It's perfect for a recorder.
Okay.
It's perfect for it. This is the new to-go bag. Never
new
be
to-go.
caught without your meant to be mere intentions bag, because it's multi-purpose, honey. It's a to-go bag to help me cover future hurricanes and storms that are sure to come.
And
in
I
our
want
life
you to
this
think of
season.
us in this moment when you carry it.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Mary.
You're a
Walton.
good-
You're fabulous.
You're in good hands, and you're going to be fine.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. All right, guys, that's Mere Motivations. We thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time.